Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. That was hard to say because I've gone through it a couple of times. That should be a blooper, but I'm going to stick with it. We're going with this.
I think we've said it like a million times.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. So now I got it right. But guess who we have with us?
She is the rose between two thorns.
Shara. Well, wait a minute. Yes, she is. Yes, let's do that.
So happy to be here, guys.
Yeah. So this is Shara. She's our third of 4 daughters.
Yes.
And we have
third
3
of
boys.
8 million kids.
Yeah, we have a few.
We have a few. And as we always say, to whoever's with us at the time, they are our favorite.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if this works out, we'll actually get other mics.
Yeah.
If not, this is all. We're just going with the 3 of us.
Yeah. So
the 2 of us.
We asked Shara to jump in today. She wasn't planning on it, but we're talking about blended families. And so I texted her and went upstairs and said, you want to jump in on this? Because we'd love some perspective from a child who's actually been in the process.
Well, she's not a child, but she was our child.
Yeah, she for 13
I have Willie good things to say.
Will we?
Will we good. So here's the thing. We started talking about this at the end of last week's podcast, that Gracie, especially because she was 4 when we got married, and this happened long before I came into the picture, but she would go to her biological father's house, and she would be so upset. And she'd come back, and she actually was hard to deal with for about a half a day or longer. And I was just wondering, from your perspective, how was that? Like a couple of things. How was it for you, Shara, going back and forth? Mm-hmm. And even when you were a little bit younger than, because you were 13 when we got married. But how was it when you were even younger and through that whole process? And then how did you deal with Gracie in that process? So tell us that.
Yeah, no, going from house to house is really difficult, especially as a young kid, because it just feels like so much instability. So it feels like you're uprooted from one life and you're going to another life, and you have to start there, but then you know you're going to end up coming back. So it's like, how do you really ground yourself as a child when you're going back and forth? It almost feels like 2 separate lives.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really difficult, and especially I think as when you're younger, going into a new house, because usually if this is like a new thing for you, your parents are going through a really traumatic divorce as well, and as a kid you can even pick up on that. Right. So it's hard to even like make sense of what's going on, and you can't really be honest about it because you know mom or dad is going through a difficult time as well. So you start to assume this role. Each kid kind of assumes their own role. So you have like the oldest usually assumes the leadership role and becomes kind of like the father figure, even if it's a girl, or and then the girl usually becomes the mother figure and takes on a lot of responsibility at such a young age, which can feel extremely overwhelming. Yeah. And as a parent, from a parent's perspective, coming at it, knowing that your kid is kind of really struggling with that, and then when they come home from, you know, the dad's house or the mom's house, they're going to need a little time to what I like to call, I'm a nanny, so I experience this often, resetting, where they can be like, have their freakouts, and it's safe to be, you know, sad or angry, because what they're really trying to do is make sense in their young mind of this instability that they just keep going back and forth to, and also kind of absorbing the parents' emotions. Yeah. They see a lot and they feel a lot. They probably couldn't put words to it, but they know something's not right. There's a lot of tension.
So let me ask you this: when Mom and I got married, was that awkward? Like, did it change the dynamic of going back and forth? And did it? I'm actually curious about how it felt. Here's this man living in the house. Mm-hmm. Like, I did not choose him.
6'4" huge man walking in.
I didn't choose this guy, but here he is. Mm-hmm. What was that like? And you can tell everybody honestly, but remember, I do hold the purse strings here.
The purse strings. I'm getting paid the big bucks for this.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of, as a kid, because I couldn't really understand what I was going through, but I felt this sense of like mom was mine. Yeah. And you were coming in and you were taking away my thing. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean?
Gracie felt that too. I could see that, both of the girls especially.
Yeah, especially the more time that goes by between divorce and then someone being reintroduced. You create this connection with your parent that's very much like, we're a team now. So now there's a new teammate coming in, but you haven't walked any of the miles with us. So like, who are you? You're kind of intimidating, and you're 6'4", and I'm like 4'1". You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think you handled it really well, where you just was like, you were like, both you and mom were very much like, okay, I'm going to give this time. I'm not going to try to force anything on you. I'm not going to try to force you to call me dad or respect me right off, right off the jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you were like, let me earn your love. Let me earn your trust. Let me do that. And so it created a safe place for me to, have those open arms when it came time, when I felt comfortable.
So I think our listeners probably go, I've got all these different kinds of people in our blended family. I know I had never been a father of boys. I have 2 older daughters, as you know. And so I'm like excited to have these boys, and they loved wrestling more than my daughters did, and more than you guys did, although you wrestled with them quite a bit. We got some videos to prove
we
that.
still do.
It was like, it's like
true.
attack Malachi time, especially Malachi. But anyway, I would wrestle with them and play with them, kind of roughhouse with them. And the dynamic with each one of you was so different. And the gender difference made it different. Was there any kind of resentment that you felt toward mom or me or your siblings? Was there any kind of resentment that went on there, or just confusion?
I think more confusion, but actually from the opposite perspective. This is very kind of tailored to my situation, but I felt like you really singled me out and really pursued me.
Yeah.
And I was not used to that.
Yeah.
I was used to a dad that did connect with the boys way more than the girls. So you really singled me out, and you kind of like spoke to my heartstrings a lot. And so I didn't know how to deal with that. So I almost resented from that perspective because I didn't know how to receive it.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful, and like you broke those barriers down, but that's still something that even to this day, we just had a conversation last week that I struggle with because I don't know how to accept that unconditional love from a father figure.
Yeah.
It's really new. So even at a young age, I still, even though I couldn't put words to it, I understood that there was this kind of like pushback from me, even though you're pursuing me with so much love and I can trust you and all of that. I was not used to it, so I didn't know how to receive it.
Yeah, I remember at first, and Kimberly, you'll probably remember this too, that especially the girls were real protective of their relationship with you.
Right.
And I felt like, I didn't feel like an intruder, but I think they saw me as somewhat of an intruder.
Yeah.
And was interrupting. How did you feel
Or
about
another
that?
person to have to share me with,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it,
Yeah.
because there was 5 kids, and frankly, we all piled into the same bed too, the girls
Yeah.
and I. So there was that connection, and so
That was out.
They're getting booted out.
Like, that time is over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure
That's a really big deal, I think.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I think a lot of single parents, especially moms, will have the kids pile in with them, especially if you are having to negotiate going back and forth in households. There's a security. You only have them so much time.
Yeah.
So having them at nighttime, cuddling in your bed or whatever,
Yeah.
that safety and security is really meaningful. So I think that was a challenge for them.
Well, all of the kids were used to kind of piling in the room. The
did.
girls would sleep in the bed,
We
and the boys
literally
would
all
lay
piled,
on
yeah.
the floor.
Yep.
I remember one night you were gone speaking somewhere, and I was alone with the kids. And Jesse, who no longer struggles with this, but when he was little, he was afraid.
Yeah.
And he came in, and he was just a little boy, and he just came in and he goes, "Can I get in bed with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, come on, get in." And it was such a thing like, okay, he's a safe guy.
Right.
That struggle, that transition from outsider to insider it really takes a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And one of our passage, and just let me deal with this real quick, or maybe just have you read that, Kimberly.
Out of Ephesians 4:11.
Yeah.
It says, "Therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace."
So last time we talked about humility, and we talked about traditions and how traditions kind of break the barriers, and like what did you call it when the kids come home? The resetting is such a good word. And so how traditions bring stability to a family, and we have traditions that we've had now for years, but especially as adult children, we have those. So we talked about that last time. We talked about humility, but the second word in this passage that you just read is the word gentleness. And the word gentleness means unaffected, or it's that word meekness that we see in Scripture a lot. And you have a definition for that. What do you call it?
It's a controlled strength. It's not weakness. Meekness is not weakness. It's controlled strength.
I think that's really good, because what it takes when you're blending a family is you have to, we're going to talk about patience next week, but you need to be gentle.
Right.
If you are harsh with the kids, and you even know this as a nanny, that if you're harsh, they don't know what to do with that. Yeah. But when you're living with as this new family, you've got to be gentle and take it easy, because here's one thing I know about kids, and even teenagers and even adults, kids, they're messy.
Yeah.
And messy, and I don't just mean their rooms are messy. I mean they're messy. And so that messiness is really, for a guy like me, I'm a neat freak.
Right.
And that doesn't mean I just like to have things neat in the house, the bed made and that kind of stuff.
Although that's part of it.
That is part of it, unfortunately. I've come a long way. I don't have the crazy, closet with everything color-coded.
Yes.
You would if you could, though.
I would, but I'm too lazy now.
You want to pay somebody.
Yeah. I actually am not driven to it as much as I used to, but I'm talking about messiness in just, I like controlled environment. I like, I like to know where we're going with this conversation, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I overly prepare for things.
And you need to get comfortable with being messy in a blended family. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
So let me move this mic here. The gentleness, I think, is really crucial for if this is the parent listening, or even the step parent, to let that gentleness translate to the other parent, the co-parent. That's good. Because even though you could have tensions, and tensions are high, divorce is ugly, there's a lot going on with that. Being gentle, especially in front of the kids, is so crucial, because there is this loyalty that your kids are going to have to both of you as parents, but especially if a step parent is stepping in, you have absolutely no right to speak ill on the other parent. Yeah. That's only going to create division in your relationship with the children, and it's actually going to show them that it is not safe to be, who they are, love their parent, pretty much is what you're saying, is it's not safe to do that in front of me.
Including the other parent.
Exactly.
So both biological parents.
Yeah. In front of the kids, it's just so crucial that you speak nothing but not amazing necessarily, but just good things about the other parent.
So
kindness.
While you're talking, I'm thinking about so many times Mom and I were both, I'm a controller, Mom's a little stubborn. Yes? Okay, let's go with that. So she can be a little stubborn, so we'll kind of butt heads a little bit and we bicker, and it's not doing damage to our relationship, but you will jokingly say, "Are you guys getting a divorce?"
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that 100 times. And as a joke, I don't think you ever felt that.
No.
Or did you feel that?
No.
No, you felt this.
Oh, actually, that's a good question. I think when I was younger, like really young, when I would see arguments, I was like, is this how divorce starts? Because the first divorce that I experienced, and the only divorce, was so shocking, and I was so not aware of what was going on. So I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know the signs. So like fights or arguments, I'm like, is this what happens when divorce is going to happen? You know what I mean? But no, not as an adult. I know it's not an option, right?
Yeah. That's not enough. Yeah, we really, it doesn't affect us in that way where we've never felt like we wanted out. Right?
It's called healthy conflict, people.
Yeah. So, well, one of the things that I know that is important is that the kids need to know that their parents love each other. And especially in this blend, and that's kind of what you were talking to, that gentleness comes, even to the point where the kids, the love that we have for each other and the attraction that we have to each other can be very gross.
For
Yeah.
the kids.
We heard it just the other day. Yeah. So it's like, hey, so you guys, why don't you go to bed? What are you guys going to bed so early? It's like,
here's a tip. If your parents ever start getting inappropriate and gross and affectionate, get your phone out and say you're going to record it and post it. Shuts it down like that.
That's a truth.
We've heard that a few times.
And I've been
telling you,
recorded
and I have
a few
videos.
times.
This is
That's
true.
right. So,
I just want to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
In speaking to the gentleness, and going back to like connecting this with our whole concept of traditions, and then someone new coming into the family, speaking to specifically us piling into bed together, Shara, like as a kid, and you seeing that Tim, as potentially like taking your spot. One of the gentle, sweet things you did in that process, I don't know if you remember this, is he would open it up on a Friday night to movie night on our floor.
Yeah.
And you would invite all the kids back in to sleep on our floor. We did this like a lot in the
I kind
early
of
days.
miss those days.
Yeah, but that was you
Let's start them up again.
that was you giving up some of your privacy, because you have a high value of privacy, and then allowing the kids into kind of like, back into that zone. So that was really sweet. And you have to look for ways. It is going to be messy, but you have to look for ways to be able to show some gentleness in the blending process.
So,
Go ahead,
go
Shara.
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that speaks to a lot of sacrifice. Like, sacrifice is just going to be your best friend through this process, whether you're someone coming in or if you're just learning to co-parent. There's going to be a lot of sacrificing that you're going to need to do, because if you know my dad, and especially as a new married couple, you don't want 5 kids sleeping on your floor on a Friday night. Like, skirt, no, thank you.
Got
But
other
there's
plans.
But you kind of have to like sacrifice things that mean to you a lot. Maybe not that big. They're not that big of a deal to you, but to the kids, it's like, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And like,
That's a
it
good
says
point.
like, you're important. You mean more than, Friday night, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So one of the things when you talk about gentleness, one of the things is this issue of discipline. So discipline is a tough thing, especially, first of all, you were 13, Ronnie was 14 when we got married. The boys were younger, and Gracie was a little girl, and she doesn't remember us not being married. But discipline's a tricky thing. It's actually a tricky thing in the nuclear family, with your biological family. But we came up with this idea, and some of you that heard the podcast about coaching, is that is maybe the best place you can go, is to be a coach. And I remember there were times where I felt like I wanted to discipline, but I just kind of held my tongue. It was, you needed to be gentle and, give really gentle correction, more so than you would be with a young teenage girl who you have raised, So I remember one day, and this is probably a couple of years in, I had gotten you a phone, and you were so excited about your own cell phone, and you were just like, oh, thank you. And then we had the problem of, at night, I'm up at like 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, and the rule was the phone had to be off. I don't remember what time, and I hear you through your door talking on the phone, and I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen.
Yo, I had a boyfriend to talk to. You know what I'm saying?
Hey.
Yeah. Well, that didn't matter. So dealing with that was kind of a tricky thing, because you don't want to be, as a parent, you don't want to be less than a babysitter,
Right.
because a babysitter or you as a nanny, you would know, you would correct that behavior. But as a step parent, although we don't use that term very much, as a step parent, you have to handle that very, very carefully.
Yeah.
Did you feel that kind of that tension, or did you feel there was harshness, or how did you feel about that?
I don't think. Thank you. I don't think. I will just say you handled this whole process really well. So there wasn't a lot that I was like, I struggled with or resented you for, because you didn't honestly do a lot of discipline. Now, as I started
Physically, never.
Oh yeah, no.
No, I didn't do that.
No.
with any kids.
But I think as I got older, I realized that you did have this tension of, I want to discipline, but I don't feel like I have the right. I do think that is a crucial conversation that needs to happen between a couple, because it still makes you feel like you're on the outside if you can't. Because it's true, as a babysitter or a nanny, you're literally get paid to like discipline, not physically, but help the kids grow up in the way they should go. But as a parent, you're kind of like, I don't know if I can. I don't want you to resent me. This is already so messy. So it is a conversation that needs to be had. I don't think the co-parent should ever physically discipline. I think that can be very damaging.
Yeah.
But I think that there should be expectations, and when expectations are met, you take the phone away. My phone was taken away for a couple days. Did that break my heart because I couldn't talk to my boyfriend? Absolutely.
Yes.
But at the same time, I learned my lesson.
Yes, and you were mad.
Yes, I was
Yes,
very
I remember that well. But that's the thing, that whole discipline, because you're not a harsh disciplinarian. You are a person that
Shara's making a face, so
Yeah.
she wants
You
something.
think she's
I'm gonna
harsh?
This is your chance
You
to
think
tell
mom's
on
a
me.
harsh
No,
disciplinarian?
no. There's always been this one thing that mom does that drives me absolutely
When you were a
nutter
little flicky
butters.
on the lip?
No,
Yeah.
no. That's horrible.
Yeah, that's violence.
But
I got flicked on the lip.
She does this thing that when she disciplines you, she like smiles through it.
Yeah.
So she's like, I don't care. This is what's happening. And I don't know if you can hear the smile in my voice, but this
Yeah.
is what's happening.
Well, some people
and
are
it's
watching.
this evil, devilish grin, truly. And it's so frustrating. Like, I would
I've
rather
seen
get
it.
spanked.
I know.
Yes, because
Yeah.
it's like you're so happy disciplining me right now, and my life is falling apart, but you're taking joy out of this.
Yeah.
That's the
And
only
actually,
thing.
that's not her heart. Her heart.
No, yes, it is.
I
I'm
think
kidding.
my
Yeah.
default is to smile through anything, even my tears. So I appreciate that you're aligning that with
Yeah.
me being evil, but I think
Yeah.
it actually is more having to do with the fact that I was trying to make it as pleasant.
We're
as
having
possible.
technical difficulties. I love
And
it.
I'm still smiling through
Trying
it.
to do 3 people on a podcast with
I
2
am
mics.
a mic stand.
You notice
gonna
I've
be
not
like,
given
Hey,
up
at
my
least
mic.
it's not in my face
I've
anymore.
not given up my mic at all
I
during this
know.
whole
Yeah.
podcast.
So talk about controllers.
Yeah,
Talk
that
about
is
sacrifice again.
yeah, but I won't sacrifice my mic. So, well, this is going to make it easier now that fell off of there. This idea of equal consequences, equal rules, equal discipline. Did you feel there was inequality in the discipline between? Of course, you didn't have to deal with, because my daughters were so much older and they were grown and out of the house. Did you feel that inequality? And I think everybody could deal with this, whether it's a blended family or not. Do you feel it was unequal with the boys and the girls?
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that. Yes, that was something that was so difficult for me, especially my teenage years, when you have the majority of our family when I was younger was boys because Gracie was really little. So it was my 3 brothers and they could get away with everything. And so that was one thing that I really, really did struggle with because, I would do something and then Ronnie would do something and Ronnie was just like, oh, well, it's fine. He's a boy. I actually heard that a couple times.
From Kimberly, not from me.
Yeah.
No.
And yeah.
From you too.
Y'all can talk about this after.
Yeah, we'll do. We're going to talk to our
Yeah,
therapist about it.
yikes.
You go ahead.
But for me, it just made me feel less than. But I also realized, and I kind of resented this, that it felt like there was a higher expectation for me. And when I wouldn't meet that expectation, I would be disciplined. So it made me constantly feel like I was I don't know, that I was failing all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was really difficult for me. And then seeing the boys doing whatever they wanted and they got away with it and it was fine. And it was like, oh, it's just them.
Do you know what the boys say? The boys say, you always give more to the girls than you do to the boys.
So that's so true too, though. I will say with that's the negative side. But the positive side is I do feel like the girls were treated and given more, which I was really thankful for. So it's, you're just not going to do this perfectly.
You guys snuggle me. You give me affection and they
Yes.
don't. And so
So you can buy your way into Dad's heart.
the other
know,
day
you
at Ronnie's graduation, we were taking pictures and I kissed him on the cheek and he's going, wow, okay, that's weird. No, it's not weird. Yeah, it is weird. But with the girls, it's
When
not.
you put your tongue on his cheek.
That was
odd.
really weird.
That was
Yes,
odd.
that was inappropriate.
I think that probably falls though into the category of, especially coming from a traditional family environment, there, the home I grew up in, there was expectations on what the girls did and didn't do. And then for the young men, like Dad is held, I think, the boys to a higher standard as far as responsibility goes earlier on in life, but he was harsher on you and Gracie as far as discipline in wanting to protect you.
Yeah.
But there is an inequity there that you struggled with, and it makes sense.
Mostly in the dating area, I was scared, and I think the fear sometimes makes discipline unequal.
Sure.
And so I was afraid, whereas the boys, I wasn't as afraid. Probably should have been. In retrospect, yes. But anyway, that was one of the fears. But before we finish this podcast, I wanted to get to an area that I think is important, and that's I think sometimes kids, unknowingly or knowingly, try to sabotage the new marriage. there was a different dynamic in ours. And I just, because of the nature of mom's divorce and the fact that my kids were grown, and so maybe this wasn't as big a deal, but I've seen this happen in a lot of families that are blended where the child knowingly, in some cases unknowingly, in other cases, try to sabotage the connection of the parents.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I feel like, I think you've experienced this too, Shara, in some of your different jobs, but children often feel like perhaps they are the reason why they either did or didn't do something, and that's why their parents aren't together.
Right.
So they carry that into a new relationship. So they feel if they didn't do something right the first time, what can they do in this situation,
Right.
to try to rectify that so they can, it can be totally subconscious, but they try to undermine, the whole new marriage setup.
Yeah.
So, and that's too much responsibility. I think that as parents, we need to be strategic to speak to our children early on to say, first of all, this had nothing to do with you. We will always love you. You're
Right.
safe,
And show it,
and
not
do
just
that
say it.
ongoing,
Yeah.
because again, they're going to come home from a parent's house and they're going to spiral, like you said, Shara, sometimes for a couple of days. And you, as a parent, want to attack the other parent or get mad at the kids, which is a mistake. And the ultimate goal is just to have a safe place for them to land and kind of detox from all of that. But
Do you have some input on that or no?
I do, but kind of from a different perspective. I think when I was younger, I was actually very much for the marriage. I don't think that would actually be something you guys would have to say if you felt like any of us kids sabotaged. Yeah, because it did
No,
that,
I
that
didn't
feeling.
see that at all.
I didn't feel, but I was in a relationship and I was engaged to somebody who had 2 kids, and one of the children, whom I absolutely love, at the beginning struggled with that, really wanted to cut things off. And it was very difficult. But I also really understood it. I think it's just because I've been working with kids for so long, but you just got to throw grace on that. That's just having those conversations, affirming that it was not them, that you love the other parent, and that you're safe. And I'm sorry that you feel that this way. I know it's hard. Giving them the time to actually verbally process what is going on. And that actually happens with you asking them questions, because kids just struggle to understand what they're feeling. So they need to be prompted a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the key. And then just seeing it for what it is and being like, this is just as hard for them, if not harder than it is for you. And you just got to pursue them. Pursuing the children is going to be your best friend. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
which brings us back around to the importance of gentleness and
Right.
grace, like you
Right.
said, Shara.
Yeah, so, well, that's all the time we have. So we're going to next week talk about patience. And it's important, if you want to blend a family, that you have these attitudes that are keep them strong. Hopefully you're learning from these. And thanks for joining us, Shara. Nice to have you. Maybe we'll get you a mic sometime.
Yeah, we need.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk
And
to our
maybe I won't be
producer
the mic
about this.
holder. I won't be the mic
Yeah.
stand.
Can I put a special request in for a bedazzled mic?
Yeah,
Yes,
bedazzled, for
yes,
sure.
queen.
Well, I think we're out of time now. Barely afford a mic. So thanks for being with us. We'll be with you next week. You've been listening to Hope Podcast. You can join us. Invite your friends to join us. We love you. God bless. We'll see you next time.